The morning sun spilled golden light over the narrow street as Daniel Alvarez adjusted the strap of his worn leather apron, the same one he had carried through years of kitchens where no one cared to know his story, only his food. Once, he had dreamed of Michelin stars and culinary awards, but life had other recipes prepared for him, and they were seasoned with heartbreak, long nights, and the kind of sacrifices that etch lines into a man's face long before his time. He was 35, a single father, and though the world measured success in bank accounts and recognition, he measured it by the smile of his 8-year-old daughter, Lily, the little girl who clung to him as if he were her whole universe. His restaurant was small, tucked between a laundromat and an old bookstore, the sign above it peeling and almost invisible to passers-by, but inside it smelled like warmth, home, and stories. Customers who wandered in often came back not because of luxury, but because every dish Daniel made carried something of his soul, an unspoken promise that food could heal. That morning, as Lily sat at a corner table with her sketchbook, humming softly, Daniel chopped onions with precise strokes, his mind drifting to bills waiting at home, the doctor's appointments he had to somehow afford, and the constant whisper of doubt that told him he wasn't enough. Yet he kept moving, because fathers don't get the luxury of breaking down. Then it happened, a sound that cut through the clatter of pans and the faint jazz humming from the old radio. A baby's cry, raw, desperate, and unrelenting, echoed into the restaurant. Daniel looked up instinctively, the way only a parent does, his chest tightening at the familiar notes of hunger and helplessness in that cry. Outside, at the edge of the restaurant's window, stood a woman whose presence seemed out of place on that worn street. She was elegant, her coat draped around her like armor, diamonds sparkling faintly at her wrist, but her expression was cracked open by panic as she rocked a baby in her arms. The infant, red-faced and sobbing, pressed tiny fists against her shoulder, unconsoled. Daniel's instincts took over before his thoughts could. He stepped outside, wiping his hands on his apron, his voice calm but firm. "Excuse me, ma'am, she's hungry, isn't she?" The woman, startled, looked at him with eyes that carried both pride and exhaustion, as if she were used to carrying the world but not this. "She won't stop crying," she admitted, her voice trembling. "I've tried everything. She refuses the bottle, and her words faltered, the strength she wore like a shield slipping for just a moment. Daniel extended his hand slightly, not to take the baby, but to offer comfort. "Come inside. Let me help." Something in his tone, the quiet confidence of a man who had soothed midnight cries and fed small mouths more times than he could count, made her hesitate only briefly before following him in. Lily watched wide-eyed as her father moved with a gentle urgency, setting a small pot on the stove, gathering fresh vegetables, a little broth, a touch of herbs. He wasn't just cooking, he was weaving care into every movement, tasting, adjusting, letting the warmth rise. The woman sat at a table, cradling her baby who still whimpered softly, exhaustion written across both their faces. Daniel knelt beside them, smiling at the little girl. "Hey, sweetheart," he murmured to the baby, his voice low and soothing. "We're going to fix this, okay?" When the food was ready, he cooled a spoonful and gently offered it. To the mother's surprise, the baby accepted, lips opening eagerly, and the crying began to ease into small hiccups of relief. Tears pooled in the woman's eyes as she watched, her shoulders trembling, because in that moment, surrounded by the hum of a humble kitchen, a stranger had done what she, with all her wealth and resources, could not. He had brought peace to her child. She whispered softly, "How did you?" Daniel shrugged with a faint smile. "I've been there. Babies need more than food. They need comfort in the recipe, love in the flavor. My daughter, she taught me that." The woman studied him then, truly studied him, as if she couldn't reconcile the man in the faded apron with the skill and tenderness he carried. She wanted to say something, to thank him, but words failed. Instead, she only held her baby tighter, who now drifted into sleep, her tiny breath steady and calm. For the first time that day, silence felt like a gift. Lily, sensing something extraordinary unfolding, approached shyly and placed a small drawing of a smiling sun on the table beside the woman. "It's for your baby," she said softly. The billionaire mother, though Daniel didn't yet know who she really was, took the paper with trembling fingers and stared at it as though it were worth more than all the jewels she wore. She cleared her throat, her voice husky. "Thank you. Both of you. You don't know what this means." But Daniel, who had long ago stopped expecting gratitude from the world, only nodded. "Every child deserves to be fed," he said simply, returning to his stove as though he hadn't just performed a miracle. Yet something inside her shifted, something she couldn't ignore. Because in that tiny restaurant, a single dad with nothing had given her everything she had been searching for: comfort, humanity, and love in a spoonful of food. She didn't know yet that this man and his recipes would change her life forever, that his kitchen would become the place where walls fell and hearts opened, where her tears would finally flow freely for reasons she hadn't dared to face. And as she stood to leave, holding her now sleeping baby, she whispered to herself, almost like a promise, "I'll be back." The days that followed felt different in Daniel's little restaurant, though he never said it aloud, because men like him didn't chase after miracles, they simply lived day by day, trusting that tomorrow would come if they worked hard enough today. Still, he found himself glancing at the door more often, listening for the sound of delicate heels against the worn wooden floor, wondering if the woman with the diamond bracelet and the fragile eyes would return. And she did. 2 days later, just as Daniel was finishing a batch of stew, the door opened and in she walked, her baby bundled in a soft blanket, her expression softer now but no less guarded. She was not the type of woman one expected to appear in such a modest place twice, yet there she was, and Lily was the first to greet her, rushing forward with a wide grin and asking if the baby wanted another drawing. The mother smiled faintly, her lips curving into something that looked almost foreign on her face, and she said yes, sitting down at the same table as before. Daniel approached quietly, wiping his hands on his apron, and asked if the baby was hungry again. "She hasn't eaten well in days," the woman admitted, her voice lower this time, almost confessional. "But last time, what you made, she slept through the night for the first time in weeks." "I thought maybe," she trailed off, as though embarrassed to admit she had come back seeking the help of a stranger. Daniel only nodded, already moving toward the stove, because for him there was no shame in needing care, only courage in asking for it. As he prepared the food, the woman watched him more closely, noticing the patience in every movement, the way he chopped with precision but never rush, the way he tasted with his eyes closed as though listening to the dish itself. She thought about the chefs she had employed before, world-renowned, expensive, flamboyant in their techniques, yet none had ever carried this quiet devotion. When the meal was ready, Daniel fed the baby again, and once more the cries melted into soft coos, her tiny fists unclenching as sleep pulled her in. The mother let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding, and in that moment something inside her cracked open, a longing she had buried beneath layers of wealth and status. "You must think I'm foolish," she whispered suddenly. Daniel looked at her, puzzled. "Why would I think that?" She hesitated, then confessed, "Because I can buy anything, clothes, cars, even people's time. But I can't give my baby peace. I can't even feed her without help. What kind of mother does that make me?" Her voice trembled, her eyes glistening, and Daniel set down the spoon, his gaze steady. "It makes you human," he said softly. "Being a parent isn't about having everything figured out. It's about showing up, again and again, even when you feel like you're failing. That's love. And from the way you hold her, I can see she already knows you love her." The woman blinked. And for the first time Daniel noticed the depth of her exhaustion, the loneliness behind her beauty. He didn't know yet that she was one of the wealthiest women in the city, a business magnate whose name was whispered in boardrooms and splashed across magazines. All he saw was a mother, desperate and tired, trying her best. And that was enough for him. She returned again the next day, and the next, until it became a quiet rhythm, Daniel cooking, Lily playing, the baby eating and then sleeping, and the mother slowly shedding pieces of her armor in this little sanctuary that smelled of garlic and rosemary. One evening, after closing, she lingered while Lily dozed in a corner with her sketchbook. She told Daniel her name, Elena Crawford, and when he didn't react with recognition, she almost laughed, because it had been years since anyone treated her like just a person instead of a headline. She told him about the empire she had inherited after her father's sudden death, the endless responsibilities, the board members who doubted her, the constant judgment of a world that expected perfection. She admitted how terrified she had been to raise a baby alone after her husband had walked out, unwilling to trade his freedom for fatherhood. Her voice broke when she said that most nights she sat in a mansion full of staff yet felt utterly alone. Daniel listened in silence, stirring a pot of soup not because it needed stirring but because it gave his hands something to do while his heart absorbed her pain. When she finished, he ladled a bowl and placed it before her. "Eat," he said simply. She did, and as the flavors touched her tongue, something unexpected happened. Memory stirred, of simpler days before wealth defined her, of her mother's kitchen, laughter at the dinner table, the feeling of being safe. Tears spilled down her cheeks before she could stop them, and she covered her mouth, embarrassed. But Daniel only shook his head. "Don't apologize," he murmured. "Food is meant to make us feel. If it doesn't, then it's just fuel. But if it does, then it's love." Elena wiped her tears, whispering, "No one has ever cooked like this for me. Not even the chefs I pay fortunes for." Daniel smiled faintly. "That's because they cook for money. I cook for my daughter. For anyone who needs it. That's the difference." The words struck her deeper than she expected, because in them was the answer to everything she had been searching for: authenticity, love without price tags, care without contracts. In that moment, she realized why she kept coming back. It wasn't just the food. It was him. Weeks passed, and soon Elena and her baby became part of the little restaurant's heartbeat. Lily adored the baby, often rocking her gently or drawing her pictures while Elena and Daniel spoke in low voices. The bond between them grew, not rushed, not forced, but like bread rising slowly, patiently, until one evening, when the restaurant was quiet and the city outside roared with its usual chaos, Elena confessed something she had never said to anyone. "You've given me something no one else could," she whispered, her fingers tracing the rim of her teacup. "Not just for my daughter, but for me. You've reminded me what it feels like to be seen. To be cared for. I don't know how to thank you." Daniel met her gaze, his own eyes reflecting a weariness that had long since turned into strength. "You don't need to thank me. Just keep showing up. That's enough." But Elena shook her head, her throat tightening. "No, it isn't. People like me, we spend our lives surrounded by everything money can buy. But you, your food, your heart, it can't be bought. And that's why it means everything." She didn't realize she was crying again until Daniel handed her a napkin, his touch careful, respectful, as though he understood how fragile this moment was. In that dim light, with the scent of simmering herbs wrapping around them, something unspoken passed between them, something that hinted at healing, at a future neither had dared to imagine. For Daniel, it wasn't about her wealth, or her name, or the diamonds she wore. It was about the way she looked at her baby with fierce love, the way she let herself cry in front of him, the way she found comfort not in grandeur but in a humble bowl of soup. For Elena, it was about the man who had nothing yet gave everything, who fed her child and in doing so fed her soul. And though neither said it aloud, both knew their lives had changed forever in this little restaurant where love was served on a plate. And as the story of Daniel, Elena, and the baby reached this turning point, dear viewer, remember, sometimes the greatest wealth is not found in gold or titles, but in the kindness of a single act, in the flavor of a meal cooked with love, in the tears that cleanse more than they hurt. If this story has touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, because more stories like this, of hope, humanity, and miracles found in ordinary places, are waiting to be told. and we'd be honored to share them with you.